I've always been the one with the clipboard, the schedule, the plan. Even as a kid, I made to-do lists for family vacations. My parents used to joke that I came out of the womb with a day planner. And maybe they weren't far off. At 32, I've got a decent job in HR, a clean condo in Fairgrove, and a knack for holding everyone else's life together, especially Tyler's. My younger brother, 6 years my junior, has been orbiting chaos since he was old enough to crawl. He's the kind of person who burns toast, forgets appointments, and tells long, rambling stories about his next big idea while forgetting to pay the water bill. And yet, he's charming. Always has been. That kind of golden boy charm that makes people lean in, laugh, forgive. Including my parents. Greg and Sharon Monroe are the type to excuse everything with a tired smile and a dismissive wave. He's just finding himself, Mom would say, even when he was 25 and I was still paying off his credit card debt from that freelance design gig that turned into a 6-month video game binge. Tyler's a creative spirit, Dad echoed, even when Tyler borrowed my car without asking and returned it with a cracked windshield and no explanation. I told myself for years that I was just being supportive. That it's what sisters do. That family steps up. But it's never gone both ways. When I had a bad breakup and needed someone to help me move out of my apartment, Tyler bailed last minute because he wasn't in the right headspace. When I had the flu, he sent a text 3 days late. But when his phone bill went unpaid, when he overdrafted his bank account again, when his car got repossessed, I was always there. Me. Not our parents. Me. At first, I chalked it up to birth order. I was the responsible one, so naturally, the weight fell on me. But over time, it stopped being just weight. It became chains. Silent, invisible chains that tethered me to his mess, to their excuses, to a role I never agreed to play. And every time I tried to set a boundary, someone, Mom, Dad, even Tyler himself, guilt tripped me back into place. Like when he maxed out his emergency credit card on a weekend in Vegas. Yes, the card that I'd co-signed, stupidly, and called me sobbing at 2 a.m., saying he didn't know what happened, that it just got out of hand, that he'd pay me back. Spoiler, he didn't. He never does. But I covered it. Again. Because he needed help. I can't remember the last time someone asked if I needed help. If I was okay. If the strain was too much. Because I wear it well, I guess. I wake up, I go to work, I manage the chaos, and I pretend I'm fine. But I'm not. Not really. What makes it worse is the way they all act like it's normal. Like this is just what families do. Like I'm somehow the villain if I flinch when Tyler's name lights up my phone. They say things like, he's your brother, as if that forward sentence is a spell that should erase the sleepless nights and financial stress and emotional fatigue. But family isn't a free pass to use someone. And love doesn't mean sacrificing your sanity. Still, I kept doing it. For years. Because there was always that flicker of hope that maybe this time would be different. That maybe Tyler would get it together. That maybe my parents would step in. That maybe someone else would pick up the slack. But no. Every time, it was me. Every mess, every crisis, every last-minute rescue, me. There were moments, small ones, where I let myself imagine a different life. A life where I wasn't the one they called when things fell apart. A life where Tyler stood on his own feet, and my parents saw me as more than a fallback plan. But those moments never lasted. They were always followed by another emergency, another, can you just help this once? Another reminder that my role wasn't optional, it was expected. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I stopped. If I just said no. If I let the chips fall where they may and didn't rush in to sweep them up. Would they be angry? Disappointed? Would Tyler crash and burn, or would he finally learn? But I never let it get that far. Until now, that is. Because something inside me is starting to fray. The rope I've been tugging on for years is splitting, fiber by fiber. And I can feel the edge coming, the moment where I finally stop carrying everyone else. I don't know what that looks like yet. I just know I'm getting closer. And once I reach it, there's no going back. This time, something's going to give. And for the first time in my life, I'm starting to think it won't be me. The text came in on a Friday afternoon while I was on my lunch break, sipping lukewarm coffee from the office machine and scrolling through emails. Tyler, took the car for the weekend. Lake trip with the guys. Be back Sunday night. No question mark. No, is it okay? Just a declaration, like he was informing me about a package delivery or a weather update. I stared at the message, blinking. He had taken my car. Without asking. Again. I called him immediately, already knowing he wouldn't pick up. Straight to voicemail. Classic Tyler. My fingers hovered over the screen, tempted to type something biting. You had no right. You can't just take my car like it's yours. What the hell, Tyler? But I knew it wouldn't land. He'd twist it, minimize it, and turn me into the uptight, overreacting sister who never knew how to have fun. By the time he finally picked up, hours later, the sun was going down and I was pacing in my living room. Tyler, I started, trying to keep my voice even. Why would you take my car without asking? He laughed, like I'd just asked why the sky was blue. You weren't using it, he said. What's the big deal? The big deal is it's my car, not a community vehicle. God, Alyssa, relax. It's just a weekend. I'll bring it back full of gas. It was like arguing with a brick wall that thought it was a mirror. Every word bounced off him, reflecting back as if the problem was mine. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just hung up. What was the point? I tried to distract myself that evening with emails and a half-finished TV series, but the irritation simmered under my skin. It wasn't just the car. It was what it represented. Years of entitlement, of taking without giving, of assuming I would always clean up the mess. Then, at 2:11 a.m., my phone rang. I jolted upright, heart racing. Tyler. Alyssa, he sobbed the moment I answered. I crashed it. I'm so sorry. Oh God, it wasn't even my fault, okay? I wasn't speeding or anything. This deer came out of nowhere, and the guys were yelling, and I swerved, and his words dissolved into unintelligible crying. Are you hurt? I asked. Instinct. Despite everything. No, well, I don't know. Maybe. It's mostly the car. It's bad, Alyssa. I sat there in stunned silence, cold dread rising in my throat. Where are you? Like, somewhere near Benton. I don't know exactly. Jesus, Tyler. I need you to do something for me, he whispered, his tone suddenly urgent. The cops are coming and I need you to say I didn't take it. That you let me borrow it. What? Just say I had permission, okay? Otherwise this could get really bad. Please, Alyssa, please. I pressed the heel of my hand into my forehead. You didn't even ask me. And now you want me to lie to the police? I'm begging you. His voice cracked. You don't understand. This could screw up my life. I almost laughed. Screw up his life? He'd spent the better part of a decade screwing it up on his own, burning bridges, dodging bills, treating every consequence like an inconvenience he could cry or charm his way out of. And now, here he was, trying to pull me down with him. No, I said. Quiet but firm. What? I'm not lying for you. Alyssa, don't do this to me, he snapped, the tears instantly evaporating. Are you seriously this heartless? And there it was. The shift. I felt it like a door slamming shut inside me. The end of something I hadn't even realized I was still holding on to. The last strand of hope, the final flicker of belief that maybe, just maybe, he'd ever understand the weight he put on me. Gone. I'm done, I said. He swore. Called me cold. Said I was ruining his life. But I didn't hear the rest because I hung up. I sat there in the dark, the silence ringing in my ears, and for the first time in years, I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I didn't start calculating how I could fix it. I just sat. Something inside me had shifted, something deep and final. This wasn't just about the car. This was the breaking point, the moment I finally understood that loving someone didn't mean sacrificing your sanity. That being family didn't mean enabling destruction. That I had a right to say no. Tyler would have to face the consequences this time. Alone. And I was finally free to stop carrying someone who never once offered to carry me. The morning sun barely cut through the blinds when my phone started vibrating, buzzing nonstop like it had something urgent to say. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Greg. Sharon. A half-dozen texts and 3 missed calls within minutes. I ignored them all. I sat there on the edge of my bed, staring at the muted screen, my heart still raw from the 2 a.m. chaos Tyler had dropped on me like a hand grenade. Then the doorbell rang. A hard, deliberate ring. I didn't move for a moment. Just sat there in my pajama shorts, wrapped in a blanket, trying to decide if pretending I wasn't home would make this go away. But no, of course not. My father had come in person. That meant he was here to make a point. That meant guilt was about to walk through my front door wearing cologne and judgment. I opened the door slowly. There he was. Greg Monroe. My father. Tall, weathered, carrying that same familiar look of restrained disappointment like it was a family heirloom. In his right hand, he held his phone, as if that would somehow serve as proof of whatever point he'd come to make. "Alyssa," he said, his tone clipped. "We need to talk." I leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed. "Do we?" He stepped forward like he might come in, but I didn't move. I let the silence answer his question. He sighed. "Your mother and I are extremely concerned. Tyler's in the hospital. Mild concussion. Some bruised ribs. But he could have died last night. And that's my fault?" I asked, voice calm, measured. Inside, I was boiling. "You're his sister," he said, like it was supposed to mean something beyond genetics. "He stole my car. He borrowed it. He didn't ask. He didn't have permission. He stole it." Greg's jaw tightened, and for a second, I saw a flash of something, maybe understanding, maybe not. But then it vanished. "You're blowing this out of proportion. He's your brother." He was scared. He panicked. "All he asked was that you back him up, and instead you hung him out to dry." I laughed, sharp and joyless. "Hung him out to dry? You mean I didn't lie to the police and commit fraud for him? I didn't shield him again like I've done for the last 10 years. Greg's face hardened. "We're a family. We support each other." "No," I snapped, standing straighter. "You support him. You coddle him. You excuse him. And you expect me to carry the weight." He shook his head, almost dismissively. "You always exaggerate, Alyssa." "I paid his rent twice last year," I shot back. "I bailed him out of credit card debt. I let him use my car when he needed it. And not once, not one single time, did either of you tell him to grow up. You just smiled and said he was your creative spirit. You think that's love? Because it's not. It's enabling. And it's killing both of us." Greg looked stunned for a moment, like I'd slapped him. Maybe in a way I had. I'd never raised my voice like this with him before. I'd always swallowed the bitterness, wrapped it in obedience, and handed it back with a smile. But I couldn't do it anymore. I wouldn't. "He's your brother," Greg repeated, but his voice was smaller now, uncertain. "And I'm your daughter," I said. But that's never seemed to matter as much. That landed. I could see it in the flicker of his eyes, the way his shoulders stiffened. But I didn't wait for him to recover. I stepped back and started closing the door. "Alyssa, don't. Why is his mess always my responsibility?" I asked quietly, meeting his gaze one last time. "Why is it never yours?" Then I shut the door in my father's face. I didn't slam it. I didn't scream. I just let the door click closed with a finality that felt seismic. Inside, my hands trembled. My chest felt tight. Not from guilt, but from the sheer, exhausting release of everything I'd held in for years. I slid down to the floor, knees pulled up, letting the silence fill the room. It wasn't that I didn't care about Tyler. It wasn't even that I wanted him to suffer. It was that I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for someone who never learned because no one ever let him. And more than that, I couldn't keep pretending that my parents' version of love was healthy. It wasn't. It was transactional, conditional, convenient. They loved Tyler because he was easy to pity. I was too self-sufficient to be their favorite, so I became their resource instead. But I was done being their resource. I sat there for a long time, long after Greg's footsteps disappeared from the hallway. And in that stillness, I realized something important. I hadn't lost anything. I had finally started to gain myself. 3 days of silence. Not a text. Not a call. Not a single knock on my door. At first, I thought maybe, they'd finally understood. Maybe my father had gone home and sat with what I said. Maybe my mother replayed it all in her head and something shifted. Maybe for once, they'd let Tyler take responsibility. But deep down, I knew better. That silence wasn't understanding. It was the quiet before another storm. So when the knock came on the fourth morning, I wasn't surprised. But I wasn't expecting two uniformed officers standing on my front porch, either. "Miss Monroe," one asked, holding up a badge. "I'm Officer Jansen. This is Officer Riley. May we come in?" My heart dropped straight into my stomach. "What's this about?" "It's regarding a report made by a Mr. Tyler Monroe concerning a stolen vehicle," he said. "We'd like to ask you a few questions." For a second, I just stood there blinking. Stolen vehicle? I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat and stayed there like glass. Tyler had taken my car, crashed it, begged me to lie. I said no. And now he filed a report? "You're kidding," I said, not moving from the doorway. "I'm afraid not," Officer Jansen replied. "According to the report, you stole the car from Mr. Monroe, who claims ownership. He also indicated that your parents provided statements confirming the claim." I don't remember walking back into the house or sitting down, but suddenly I was at the kitchen table, a mug of tea in front of me I hadn't made. The officers were patient but formal, explaining that they were following up because it was now an open investigation. My own parents had signed written statements corroborating Tyler's lie. And Tyler, he hadn't just thrown me under the bus. He'd backed over me with it. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the text, and turned the screen toward them. "Hey, took the car for a quick lake weekend. Be back Sunday night. You weren't using it anyway, right?" The officers leaned in. Officer Riley read it twice. I saw the tension in her shoulders shift. "Can you forward that to this address?" she asked, handing me a card. I did it without saying a word. Then I asked calmly, "May I file charges?" They paused. "Are you sure?" "I'm very sure. Filing a grand theft auto charge against your own brother should feel impossible, like crossing a moral line you can't uncross." But it didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like clarity. He lied to the police. He weaponized our parents. He tried to ruin me legally, financially, emotionally. And for what? Because I refused to shield him one more time? I wasn't protecting him anymore. I was protecting myself. After they left, I sat at the table with a tea I never drank. My phone was still in my hand, the screen dimmed, the last flicker of Tyler's message fading out. I thought I might feel regret, maybe fear, but I didn't. I felt something deeper, something cleaner. Resolve. I could hear my mother's voice in my head already. "You didn't have to escalate it. You didn't have to make it so formal." But she wasn't here. None of them were. And the truth was, they had already made it formal the second they signed those statements. I wasn't their daughter in that moment. I was collateral damage in their campaign to protect Tyler's fantasy world, where nothing was ever his fault and every consequence was someone else's burden. And finally, I refused to carry it. That afternoon, I drove, not my car, of course, it was totaled, to the Brent County station and signed the paperwork in person. The detective handling the case, a woman named Hartley, was straightforward and sympathetic. She'd seen this kind of dynamic before, family loyalty masking long-term harm, she called it. I didn't cry when I told her what happened. I didn't apologize for pressing charges. I told the truth like it was a muscle I'd finally started using. "Before I left," she said, "you're doing the right thing." I nodded. But what I wanted to say was this, I know. On the drive home, I kept thinking about that moment at the door, the officers standing there, my name in their mouths, and Tyler's lie hanging in the air like smoke. It should have broken me. But it didn't. It finally set me free. This wasn't just about the car. This wasn't about some collision on a dark road. This was about a collision that had been building for years, between who I was told I had to be and who I actually was. And I wasn't the shield anymore. I was the boundary. The call came just after lunch on a rainy Tuesday, while I was sitting at my desk pretending to care about the benefits enrollment spreadsheet. My phone buzzed quietly, and I almost ignored it. until I saw the name, Dana Liscombe, Tyler's manager at Norwick Creative Agency. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before answering, already knowing it wasn't going to be good. Hi, this is Alyssa Monroe. Hi, Ms. Monroe. This is Dana Liscombe. I'm Tyler's supervisor. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm calling to verify some information. Tyler listed you as the owner of the vehicle in his recent police report, and, well, we've become aware of the charges filed against him. I just need clarification. There it was. The professional, polite unraveling. I swallowed hard, keeping my tone steady. Yes, the car was mine. Tyler took it without permission, and I filed charges after he attempted to lie to the police about it. A pause. Just long enough to register the weight of my words. I see, Dana said, her voice dropping into something cooler, more resigned. Thank you. That's all we needed to confirm. She didn't say it, but I knew exactly what she meant. That afternoon, Tyler lost his job. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even flinch. I just sat there at my desk, staring at a half-finished email, letting the rain tap against the window as the weight of what I'd done pressed gently but firmly against my chest. I hadn't gotten him fired. He had. I just stopped protecting him from it. It wasn't long before the calls started. First, a voicemail. Then another. And another. The first was angry. I can't believe you'd do this to me. You just ruined my life. Why would you talk to my boss? The second was quieter. Alyssa, please. Just call me back. We can fix this. It doesn't have to be this way. The third was a mess of tears and sniffles. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm scared. I'm sorry. Please. I didn't listen to the rest. I deleted them all. Blocked his number. Then sat there on the couch with my phone face down, the silence in my condo stretching like a new kind of comfort. A different kind of quiet. Not the absence of drama, but the end of it. The final click of a lock I should have turned years ago. Because I had finally chosen not to re-enter the cycle. The chaos hurt apology cycle. I knew it too well. Tyler would screw up. I would rescue him. He'd cry and say sorry, make vague promises to do better, and I'd soften. Then it would all start again. A merry-go-round of dysfunction that I had ridden far too long. But this time, I stepped off. I spent the rest of the evening cleaning. Vacuuming, wiping down counters, doing laundry. Small, ordinary things that grounded me. Things I didn't have to abandon to answer a crisis. It felt strange, in a good way. Like I had reclaimed the hours I used to spend cleaning up someone else's fire. Later, I poured a glass of wine and sat on the balcony, wrapped in an old cardigan, watching the rain lighten into mist. I could still feel the ghosts of guilt hovering around the edges. That old, familiar voice whispering that I should have called him back. That I should have picked up, helped, soothed. But then another voice rose, louder now. My own. You've done enough. I thought about every voicemail I'd saved over the years. Tyler begging for money, for rides, for rent, for favors. I remembered how often I'd rearranged my life to fix his. Skipped dates, canceled plans, stayed up all night trying to figure out how to help someone who never once tried to help himself. And what had I gotten in return? A false police report. A brother who weaponized his charm like a knife when he didn't get his way. Parents who never once stood up for me the way they rushed to cover for him. The cycle wasn't just over. It was scorched. And I wasn't going to water the ashes. That night, I didn't check my phone once. I didn't wonder what Tyler was doing or where he'd go next. I didn't feel obligated to fix the hole he'd dug for himself. And most surprisingly of all, I slept. Not the light, anxious sleep of someone waiting for the next emergency. I slept deeply. Fully. Like I had finally let go of a burden I didn't realize I'd been carrying on my back for most of my life. By morning, there were no new messages. No apologies. No manipulations disguised as remorse. Just silence. And for once, it didn't feel cold. It felt like peace. The knock came late afternoon, just as I was folding laundry in the living room. A soft, hesitant rapping, like someone unsure of their welcome. I looked through the peephole and sighed. Greg and Sharon stood there, my parents, shoulders hunched against the wind. eyes tired, but still burning with some purpose I already knew I wouldn't like. I opened the door just wide enough to see them, not wide enough to invite them in. What now? Sharon stepped forward immediately, her hands clasped like she was trying to hold herself together. We need to talk, Alyssa. I figured. Greg cleared his throat, eyes darting to the hallway like he was checking for neighbors. It's about Tyler. Of course it was. Sharon's voice trembled. He's sleeping in his car. He has nowhere to go. I leaned against the doorframe and said nothing. He's lost everything, she continued, eyes glossy. His job, his friends. He's falling apart. Greg's tone turned sharper, more accusatory. If you don't take him in, he's going to be homeless. I almost laughed. That had to be the line they rehearsed on the drive over. If I don't take him in. As if this was my responsibility. As if it ever had been. Is that supposed to scare me? I asked, my voice even. Because you're too late. Sharon blinked, taken aback. Do you know how many years I've sacrificed for him? I continued. Do you know how many times I paid his rent, cleaned up his debt, bailed him out? And not once, did either of you say, this isn't her job. You just watched it happen. You let it happen. Greg raised a hand like he wanted to cut me off, but I wasn't done. I gave up vacations, nights out, time with friends, peace of mind. I gave up me for him. And all I ever got in return was more mess. More emergencies. More of you two expecting me to fix it. He's your brother, Sharon whispered, like it was some sacred truth. And I'm your daughter, I said. But you've spent years treating me like a tool. Like a resource to be used whenever Tyler couldn't get it together. Which is always. You're being cruel, Greg said, his jaw tightening. I met his gaze without flinching. No. The cruelty was expecting me to bleed for someone who never once lifted a finger for me. The cruelty was in letting your son weaponize your love and hide behind it every time he screwed up. And now you want me to give him shelter? After he lied to the police? After he filed a stolen vehicle report against me? Are you hearing yourselves? They were quiet. For the first time in maybe years, they didn't have a rehearsed defense. Sharon's lip trembled, and Greg looked like he wanted to be anywhere but here. If you had shown him consequences sooner, I added, softer now, he wouldn't be sleeping in his car. If you had told him no, when he was 20, 25, 30, he might have grown up. But you didn't. And now he's finally getting a taste of what real life is like, and instead of letting him learn, you're here trying to hand me the bill again. Tears slipped down Sharon's cheeks. She looked so small in that moment, so fragile. I almost felt bad. Almost. I'm sorry he's hurting, I said. But I'm not sorry I'm not the one fixing it. Greg stepped forward, his voice quieter than before. What happened to you? That question hit harder than I expected. What happened to me? I straightened. I realized I mattered too. And then I closed the door. Again. This time, it didn't feel like defiance. It felt like protection. Not just from them, from the version of myself I used to be. The woman who would have opened the door all the way and invited the storm back in. The woman who would have offered her couch, her savings, her energy. Who would have said, okay, just for a week, and then ended up trapped for months. But I'm not her anymore. I stood there behind the door, listening to the soft shuffle of their footsteps as they walked away. No slamming, no shouting, no dramatic exit. Just two people realizing, maybe too late, that I wasn't going to bend anymore. And God, it felt good. That evening, I made myself dinner. I lit candles. I played music. Not to drown anything out, but because I could. I didn't have to be on edge, waiting for another call, another emergency. For the first time in a long time, I had space to just exist. To breathe without bracing. Tyler would figure something out. Or he wouldn't. Either way, it wouldn't be on my shoulders. Not anymore. Because I had finally drawn the line. And this time, it was going to hold. The final text came on a Wednesday morning. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, sorting through work emails, the hum of the dishwasher filling the silence. My phone buzzed once. Just one message. I'm out of here. Hope you're proud of what you did. No emojis. No dramatic punctuation. Just that. Final. Simple. And for some reason, it hit harder than all the voicemails, all the accusations, all the tears. I read it twice, then set the phone down. I didn't respond. I stared out the window, watching wind twist the trees. It was such an ordinary day. No thunderclap. No soundtrack. But inside, something deflated quietly. Like a balloon I'd been clutching too tightly, too long. The pressure that had built over years, the constant emotional readiness, the guilt, the anxiety, just evaporated. But it didn't leave peace in its place. Not right away. It left emptiness. Not the kind you run from. The kind you sit with, palms open, wondering what's supposed to fill the space. It wasn't just Tyler's absence that weighed on me. It was the final death of hope. Not the hope that he'd suddenly become perfect or responsible or grateful. Those were fantasies I'd long since buried. But the quieter hope. The one that whispered maybe one day he'd see me. Really see me. Not just as the fallback. The fixer. The ATM. But as his sister. As someone who mattered too. That hope had survived so much. And now it was gone. I thought of him somewhere, tossing whatever bags he had into the back of someone else's borrowed life. Leaving. Disappearing. Maybe he meant out of the city. Maybe out of the state. Or maybe it was just his way of saying he was giving up. Either way, it was clear. He wasn't reaching out for help anymore. He was blaming me for not saving him. And I would be lying if I said there wasn't a part of me that ached. Not because I wanted to fix it. Not anymore. But because I wanted something different between us. I always had. I wanted the version of Tyler I used to imagine when we were kids, the brother who might grow up into someone I could lean on too. The one who'd pick me up from the airport, bring wine to dinner, call just to check in. I wanted that so badly I'd spent years trying to earn it, as if love from him was something I could buy with loyalty. But the truth settled in like cold air. I never really had a brother. I had a responsibility. One I hadn't signed up for, but one I'd carried because no one else would. And now he was gone. Not just physically. Emotionally. Spiritually. And for the first time, I wasn't chasing after him. I wasn't drafting the reply. I wasn't opening old photos or reading old texts or rehearsing what I'd say if he called again. I just sat there and let the silence fill the room. Later that day, I opened the group family chat out of instinct. A place that used to be full of casual updates, shared photos, birthday wishes. But now? Just the echo of his message. No replies. Not from Greg. Not from Sharon. The entire thread was frozen in that final sentence, like everyone had read it and decided, consciously or not, to let it sit. Maybe they were waiting to see what I'd say. Maybe they thought I'd cave and send some kind of lifeline. Or maybe they didn't know what to say either. Maybe for once, they were feeling the absence too. But I didn't type anything. I closed the thread. The rest of the day passed in fragments. I worked. I answered calls. I paid bills. I made dinner. And yet, the heaviness lingered, less like grief and more like release. A kind of shedding I couldn't rush. There's a mourning that happens when you stop hoping for something that was never yours to begin with. And that kind of mourning? It doesn't come with tears. It comes with stillness. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and scrolled through my phone one last time. I stared at his message, wondering if he'd meant it. If he really left. If this was the last time I'd hear from him for weeks, months, years, maybe. And then I deleted it. Not out of anger, but because I needed space. Not on my phone. In my heart. It didn't feel like an ending, not exactly. It felt like a clearing. Like the first breath after a storm, when the debris is still everywhere, but the sky is open again. Tyler was gone. And the version of me who lived to protect him, she was gone too. And in that silence, I began to feel something else slowly take root. Possibility. I was brushing my teeth when the knock came. Soft. Too soft to be the mailman. Not the kind of knock that says, I need something. More like, I'm not sure I should be here. I froze, toothbrush still in hand, foam collecting in the corner of my mouth as I strained to listen again. Another knock. Barely audible, but there. It was late, well past 10. My heart picked up speed. 1,000 possibilities ran through my mind, most of them irrational. But somehow, even before I opened the door, I knew. It was him. Tyler. I wiped my mouth with the towel, tossed it over the sink, and padded barefoot to the door. I hesitated for just a second before opening it, and there he was. Except not really. This wasn't the same brother who had called me heartless or begged me to lie to the cops. This wasn't even the version of him that had always shown up in disarray with a cocky smile and a charming excuse. This Tyler was quiet, unshaven, slouched. His hoodie hung off his frame like it didn't fit anymore. His eyes were bloodshot, not just from exhaustion, but from something deeper. Like he hadn't been sleeping in weeks. Or maybe like he'd finally been seeing things clearly. He didn't speak right away. He just looked at me like he wasn't sure if I'd slam the door or let him in. Like he hadn't actually planned this far. "Hi," he said, voice small. I didn't know where else to go." I leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "So you came here?" He nodded, eyes flickering up to meet mine and then back to the ground. "I'm not asking for anything. I'm not here to crash or get money or whatever else you probably think." "I don't have to think," I said evenly. "I remember." He flinched a little at that, but he didn't argue. That was new. The Tyler I knew would have had a comeback, a joke, a deflection. But this version stood in the awkward weight of silence, shivering slightly in the chill night air. I needed to say something," he murmured, voice cracking. "I need my sister back." The words hit me like a slap. Not because they were cruel, but because they were so tragically off the mark. Like he truly believed I'd been missing, like I'd walked away from him without reason. I let the silence stretch. I wanted him to sit with it, to feel the discomfort instead of running from it. He needed to. "Tyler," I said finally, my voice low but steady, "you didn't lose me. You threw me away." He looked up, and for the first time in forever, there was no fire in his eyes. Just guilt. Regret. Maybe shame. "I didn't know what else to do," he whispered. "After you filed the report." I was angry. I felt betrayed. But then I started thinking about all the times you should have done that. And didn't. I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to fill in the blanks for him. He needed to get there on his own. "I don't know who I am without you fixing everything," he admitted. "It's like, I didn't realize how much I was depending on you until you stopped." I nodded slowly, letting his words wash over me, but not letting them break me. I'd waited years for him to say something, anything, that sounded remotely like accountability. And now that it was here, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt sad. Because it was too late. "You always thought I'd catch you," I said. "That no matter how far you fell, I'd be there. Because I always was." He looked away again. "But catching you meant letting go of myself," I added. "And I can't do that anymore." "I won't." "I'm not asking you to," he said quickly. I guess I wanted you to know I'm sorry. For all of it. I don't expect anything." That part, at least, seemed real. For once, there was no ask attached to his apology. No strings. No manipulation. Still, I didn't move from the doorway. "I don't hate you," I said quietly. "But I also don't trust you. And I don't owe you access to my life just because you showed up with sad eyes and a few regrets." He nodded. "Yeah. I figured." And that was it. He turned to go, shoulders slumped, hands buried deep in his pockets like he was trying to shrink into himself. "Tyler," I called out softly. He stopped but didn't turn around. "I hope you figure it out," I said. "But it has to be without me." He nodded once. "Yeah. I know." I watched him walk down the hall, disappearing into the dim stairwell, his footsteps fading away. When the door clicked shut behind me, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just exhaled, long and slow, and leaned back against the door. That knock had changed nothing. But somehow it still felt important. Because for the first time, Tyler didn't expect to be saved. And for the first time, I didn't offer. The sun was setting when he came back the next evening, as if the silence from last night had just been a pause and not the final act. I heard the knock, familiar now, and before even opening the door, I knew it would be Tyler. Some part of me had been waiting, not out of hope, not even out of dread. Just a knowing. Like I could sense the unfinished thread pulling taut between us. I opened the door. Same hoodie. Same tired face. But this time, there was no weight in his eyes, no apology poised on his tongue. Just something raw. Quieter. "I know you don't want me here," he said, before I could speak. "But I need to say something. One last thing." I hesitated, then stepped aside. He didn't take it as an invitation to sit or settle in. He stood just inside the door, arms crossed tightly over his chest, like he was trying to keep himself from unraveling. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began. "That I threw you away. That I expected you to catch me. And you were right." His voice cracked, and for once, he didn't try to disguise it with bravado or charm. "I used you like a safety net," he continued. "And the messed up part is, I never even saw it. I just thought, that's what sisters did. I never thought about how heavy that made your life. I never stopped to ask if you were okay." I folded my arms and leaned against the wall, letting the silence stretch just enough to make him earn this moment. "You were the strong one," he said, almost like a confession. "So I figured you didn't need anything from anyone. Least of all me." "I needed a brother," I said quietly. "Not a burden." He looked down at his shoes. "I know." We stood there in that small space between past and present, between apology and closure. It felt suspended, this moment I'd imagined more times than I could count. But it didn't feel victorious. It felt like a wound finally being acknowledged after years of pretending it wasn't bleeding. "I hurt you," he said, "and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I just needed you to know I see it now. All of it. What I did. What I asked of you." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to let those words soften me. But truth has a weight, and it doesn't lift easily. Not after years of lies and manipulation. I needed to say the truth too. For me. "I stopped waiting for you to become the person I needed," I said, voice steady. "I spent years hoping, desperately hoping you'd change. That one day you'd show up for me. That one day you'd stop making me pay for your mistakes." Tyler nodded. "I know. I cried over you more times than I can count," I continued, not to shame him, but to finally give voice to the ache I'd swallowed for too long. "I hated myself every time I said yes when I wanted to scream no. And I hated that you always made me feel guilty for choosing myself. For having boundaries. That's not love, Tyler. That's control." His jaw tensed, but he didn't interrupt. "You filed a stolen vehicle report against me," I said, the words sharp and heavy in the air. "You let Mom and Dad back you up. You tried to ruin me. And even then, I still questioned myself. I still wondered if I was being too harsh." "I was desperate," he murmured. "It's not an excuse. But I was scared." "So was I admitted. Scared that if I let go, you'd fall apart. Scared that if I finally said no, I'd lose everyone. And I did. But you know what?" He looked up, eyes wet. "I gained myself. A beat passed. 2. Then he whispered, "I don't deserve your forgiveness." I nodded. "Maybe not. But that's not why I'm here." He took a step forward, tentative. "Can we start over? Slowly? As people? As siblings, maybe?" And there it was, that final plea. Not a demand. Not a manipulation. Just a question. But I had my answer. "No," I said gently. "We don't need a dramatic ending, Tyler. We already had it. This is just clarity." He blinked. "So this is goodbye?" I took a breath. It's the goodbye that matters. He stood there for another long second, like he wanted to fight it, but he didn't. He just nodded, swallowed hard, and walked to the door. This time, I didn't close it behind him right away. I let it stay open for a moment, watching his back as he disappeared down the hallway. There were no tears. No shouting. No begging. Just silence. Real, final silence. And as I shut the door, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. 2 months later, I woke up to silence. Not the kind that comes from isolation, but the kind that feels earned. A silence without tension, without the low hum of anxiety waiting to rise. No missed calls. No urgent texts. No guilt-laced voicemails. Just the morning sun sliding through linen curtains and the soft rustle of leaves outside my apartment window in Brook Hollow. My alarm buzzed once before I reached over and turned it off. I didn't hit snooze. I didn't bury my head under the pillow dreading the day. I just got up. And for the first time in years, that was enough to make me smile. Life had changed. It wasn't some massive transformation, no dramatic glow-up or Instagram-worthy pivot. It was quiet and deliberate. I'd started a new job at Finley and Cole, a mid-sized communications firm where no one knew my history, no one saw me as someone else's fixer. I was just Alyssa. Competent, kind, focused. I left at 5. I slept through the night. I ate breakfast without checking 10 things at once. My home reflected the shift. No signs of Tyler's chaos. No emergency bags, no post-it notes reminding me of bills I'd paid for someone else. The guest bedroom was no longer a holding cell for his belongings. It was now a reading nook, bathed in soft light and filled with books I'd never had time to finish. I lit candles on Tuesday nights just because I could. Sometimes I would catch myself listening for the buzz of drama, the knock of crisis. But it never came. And slowly, I stopped expecting it. The quiet became my new rhythm. There were moments, of course, when I thought of him. Random ones. Seeing a comic book in a bookstore window. Hearing a certain song on the radio. Even just walking by a coffee shop we used to sit in when things were good. I'd remember the way he used to make me laugh when we were kids, the way we'd sneak out to the backyard and build forts. Those memories hurt differently now. Not sharp. Just tender. I didn't hate him. Not anymore. That emotion had burned out along with the rest of the noise. What remained was a kind of detached compassion, a hope that he'd figure it out, that he'd find his way. But not at the cost of me. Because I'd spent too many years thinking love meant sacrifice. That the deeper the bond, the more pain you had to endure. But now I knew better. Love, real love, doesn't hollow you out to fill someone else. It meets you halfway. It holds space for you too. That morning, as I walked to the corner cafe, I passed a woman arguing with someone on her phone. Her voice was tight, her shoulders hunched. I didn't know her, but I knew the look, frazzled, responsible, burdened by someone else's mess. I almost wanted to stop and tell her she was allowed to let go. That it was okay to choose peace. But I didn't. She would find that path when she was ready. Just like I had. I ordered my coffee, black, 1 sugar. And found a seat by the window. I opened my laptop, catching up on notes for a new client. As I typed, I caught my reflection in the glass. I looked calm. Not exhausted. Not resentful. Just me. Choosing myself wasn't a one-time act. It was a practice. It meant waking up every day and refusing to step back into the roles I'd outgrown. It meant not explaining my boundaries, not shrinking my needs, not letting someone else's chaos become my identity. It meant letting go and staying gone. I took a sip of coffee and exhaled slowly, the warmth settling into my chest. My phone buzzed once, a message from my new coworker, inviting me to lunch. I smiled and typed back a quick yes. No cancellations. No last-minute crises pulling me away. I had space now. For new things. For new people. For a version of myself I'd almost forgotten existed. Alyssa Monroe. Not the fixer, not the fallback. Just a woman with a quiet morning, a hot coffee, and a life of her own. And I was finally, deeply, profoundly okay.